Joining me now is Democratic Congressman David Cicilline, member of the House Judiciary and Foreign Affairs. Congressman, thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Kellyanne Conway, should she be held in contempt by the House for not agreeing to testify about the Hatch Act issue?
Of course. Look, the statement that Kellyanne Conway just made about harassment, well, I guess if requiring people to follow the law constitutes harassment, then this is harassment. But the reality is the committee is interested in hearing from her about her persistent violations of law, the Hatch Act. The Office of Special Counsel, which is a nonpartisan office, recommended her termination, her firing, because of her ongoing violations of law. The Committee of Jurisdiction has the responsibility to bring her before the committee and understand what's going on to hold this administration accountable. And you can't just not show up when you've been served with a subpoena. Anyone else in America who got a subpoena who didn't show up would be in custody. And Kellyanne Conway is no different. She's not above the law. She has to comply with a lawfully issued subpoena, and she ought to be held in contempt for defying a subpoena.
Now, she's asserting First Amendment rights. The Hatch Act, though, is very explicit about this. And this does not involve anything covered by executive privilege, which would be her advice to the president, right? These are public remarks she made on television, on the lawn of the White House.
That's right. This has nothing to do with any advice she's given the president, which is why it's not anything covered by executive privilege. This is part of the ongoing effort of this White House to stonewall oversight, to refuse to be held accountable by claiming absolute immunity. You can't ask anyone in the administration anything. That doesn't exist in the law. It's totally made up, and she is required to come before the committee. If she has a lawful privilege to assert, then she can invoke it before the committee. But you don't get to just defy the subpoena. So I hope the committee will promptly hold her in contempt and compel her attendance before the committee.
Now, you just came from the caucus. You heard the speaker, and there is going to be this vote tonight about the president's comments about 4 of your colleagues. Where do you stand on this? And tell us where the caucus stands after this meeting.
Well, I think the caucus is unified. Have to, in a very strong language, condemn the president's racist comments and his tweets. This is an ongoing effort by this president to not only divide the country, but to distract from the work that's being done here in Washington on behalf of the American people. We've passed over 230 pieces of legislation, 50 major pieces of legislation that deal with prescription drugs, equal pay for equal work, raising family incomes, a whole number of bills, the most important anti-corruption bill in decades. They're all in the Senate, and the president ought to spend his time trying to convince Mitch McConnell to bring those bills to the floor to get a vote so that the work of the American people can be completed. Instead, he's using it as an effort to attack some of our colleagues in a very racist way in an attempt to distract from the good work that's being done and to explain away his failure to lead, his failure to actually fight to get that prescription drug bill to the Senate floor, his failure to fight to get our bill to raise family incomes to the floor, to take up H.R. 1, the biggest anti-corruption bill in decades. Talk to Mitch McConnell. Make a difference. Bring those bills to the floor for a vote instead of trying to distract by engaging in a fight with 4 of our colleagues. His behavior was despicable. What he said is un-American, and it should be condemned by everyone.
Does it make an impeachment vote or an impeachment process more likely?
Look, I have said quite some time ago that I think the time is long past for the Judiciary Committee to open an impeachment inquiry and to begin the formal process of considering whether or not articles of impeachment should be filed. I think for many people it's just one more example of why this president doesn't understand what has made our country strong and great, and the envy of the world is our respect for human dignity, our value of diversity. It's one of our great strengths. And I think it's just one more example of why he's not qualified to sit in the Oval Office.
Congressman David Cicilline, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us today.